I've been collecting Ninjago minifigures for a very long time now. I consider myself a collector of minifigures over the sets in general, and over the course of the years, I've got maybe 80% of all the unique prints when it comes to Ninjago. And I will get 100% of the unique prints, don't get me wrong, but the fact is that this has become an absolute nightmare to actually do, and I'll explain how, because there's multiple reasons why this has come to be. But honestly, everyone's at blame for this, so I want to rant. But let's actually track back a little bit. Of course, Ninjago has been selling sets since 2011, and I'm not exactly sure on how they determine where the minifigures go in what sets. I honestly think to an extent sometimes it's just done by spin wheel, but the fact is that some sets include certain minifigures. It's clearly done by how sellable they are, how desirable they are, but there are so many different factors, and honestly, most of them just don't make any sense to me, apart from the fact that they just simply want everyone to buy them. But the fact is that it was never this strenuous back in the day. I mean, 2011, if you wanted a set of Ninja minifigures, all you would have to do is simply buy the spinners, and even then, they were relatively cheap, and you would still have to get other things to complete your armies, but other than that, you could still get them for a good price. And I think that was honestly a good gimmick, given a cheap way to get your hands on the Ninja minifigures. But no, modern day Ninjago, don't even think about it. Want some examples? If you wanted to get all of the Golden Ninja from Legacy, you would have to buy the Ultrasonic Raider set to get your hands on the Zane, which was a fairly expensive set, and obviously notably more expensive than the rest. And it was also in a terrible set. So your option was to either try and get your hands on this set, which was quite expensive like I said, and it was basically the only minifigure that you would have actually wanted from that set, or you would have to try and buy the minifigure separately. But then that comes into the other issue. Because no one was buying the set and no one wanted the set, if you were buying it, you were buying it for the Zane, this completely inflated the price of Zane, and trying to get your hands on him is very difficult as well, because he is rare as well because of it. So you're left in this repetitive cycle of having to pay tens of pounds for a single minifigure, when simply put, you just wanted to complete your set, when all the others are relatively cheap, including a Woo minifigure, which was in a more expensive set. It is crazy to think that getting a Golden Zane was that difficult, and I can tell you because I spent months trying to track it down. But hey, that might just be a relatively early occurrence, that might be just something that's more in recent time. No, let's go back to one of the most beloved waves we ever got, possession. Did you want a Possession Lloyd? Did you want a version of his Deepstone suit? Well, you had two options. Either you had to buy the Bounty, which was 100, or the Temple of Air Jitsu, which was 200. That's not easy. Which again, in similar vein, completely inflated the price of Deepstone Lloyd. So if you wanted a Deepstone version of him, you would have to pay a lot more than you probably would have expected to. And honestly, this one's more polarizing because even though this is similar in vein to the Golden Zane, at least you could argue that it's the exclusive 10th year anniversary version. Whereas the Possession Wave, there were other opportunities to give us a version of Lloyd in a cheaper set, but they simply didn't. And again, I know people will say this is ultimately because they want you to buy those more expensive sets, but I'm going to be honest, having them in these really expensive ones that ultimately kids will want and ultimately kids probably won't be able to get, it is really downplaying the severity of it. Because why wouldn't you want kids to be able to get more of these sets to be able to get these minifigures? If you just had simply a smaller set with that version of Lloyd, people would have bought that set. But instead, they probably just didn't get a Lloyd. And I know that for a fact, because again, I did that at the time. But don't worry, speaking of Lloyd, this brings us into the next issue, where they do give us a version of that Ninjago minifigure, but inaccurate. I don't get this idea that LEGO put inaccurate versions of minifigures in sets simply just because. There is no reason to do it, just give us the full version of the minifigure. But again, no. Take Season 11 Lloyd. Obviously, the Season 11 outfits were around for years, and of course a lot of people wanted it because of that reason. All of the ninja were relatively easy to get, apart from Lloyd. The full version of the Season 11 Lloyd released in the Lloyd Titan Mech set, and if you wanted to buy the set itself today, you would be paying 2 to 3 times its original asking price. But that was the only way to get your hands on the full version of Lloyd. However, they did release the same version of Lloyd in a very, very small set, but instead he's got this weird black half mask, so because of that, he's completely inaccurate. And the fact is that that one little mask that is only in that Lloyd Titan mech set is the only thing that's actually worth money because of it. Because, like you said, the rest of him is quite cheap. And it got to the point where people were using the crystallized version of the mask to actually replace the half mask. But even then, the crystallized mask symbol is a different color, just as an extra bit of annoyance if you wanted it to be accurate without having to pay an extra 20 just for a mask. And these purposeful inaccuracies didn't even stop there. They are still in Ninjago sets to this very day, and in the most recent wave, we have had the most outright instance of the most inaccurate Ninjago minifigures I think I've ever seen. Even though it is a 4+ set, the Rogue vs Drix car race duel, I mean, this is by far the most inaccurate set in terms of minifigures, and you can argue that it's because it's a 4+ set, but honestly, this is really annoying. You could incentivize people to buy a 4+ set if you actually put accurate Ninjago minifigures in there. But let's have a look, because there are 3 minifigures in this set, and they are all inaccurate. First off, you've got that Drix, which is a version of him that doesn't come with any shoulder armor, which immediately makes it inaccurate. But to be fair, Drix has had an issue since his minifigure first released, because for some reason in his very first wave where he came out, he decided to come out with 2 different colors of shoulder armor, and it's led to the point of which one is actually more accurate to the show. Why does this exist? So you got no shoulder pads for Drix, yeah, that's kind of fine. Then you turn around and then you've got Rogue, who for some reason is wearing a ninja mech mask. Now, not only is this a blatant misuse of a ninja mask, because honestly I think this was to make people think that Rogue was going to become Jay at some point, but obviously as of Season 3 Part 1 that hasn't happened. The fact is that they've added this version of the mask onto Jay for no apparent reason, and again, just makes it completely inaccurate. And what makes it more annoying is that this is an exclusive mask, so not only have they gone out their way to make a different version of the mask, they've done it for seemingly no reason. And then in my opinion, the biggest offender of all of these then is the Nia minifigure, which does not come with her armor. And honestly, this is the biggest misfire I've ever seen in any Ninjago sets. With this wave of ninja in their spectral suit, you will notice that Nia is only in this set and then in the Temple Bounty. So, if you want an actual accurate version of Nia, you would have to spend £180 to actually get your hands on her, which is going to completely inflate her price just because of shoulder armor. Honestly, it makes no sense, and it's by design, I understand that, but at the same time, if you're giving it away to get a more affordable version of Nia, you probably would make more money, because people will actually be willing to buy it. This set is without a doubt the most inaccurate set I've ever seen in terms of Ninjago minifigures. And again, you can say it's because it's a 4+ set, but at least incentivize a reason to buy it. If the minifigures are good, I would buy a 4+ set, but they simply aren't, and I don't understand why. And you can't even argue that, oh well, it's a cheaper set, they can't put the shoulder armor in, because then you've got Kai's motorcycle speed race set, which has a full version of Kai's spectral suit. So it's completely possible and completely doable. They just simply don't. So we've discussed how LEGO have a habit of putting minifigures only in the larger sets to try and make people buy the bigger sets, and I mean, I didn't even cover all the problems with the newest wave anyways when it comes to that, aka Spectral Zane. And then we've also discussed how they put purposefully inaccurate minifigures for no discernible reason. But there's a third aspect to this that I want to talk about, and that is when they put too many of the one minifigure in way too many sets. They somehow go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, and they somehow give us millions of versions of the same minifigure for no discernible reason. I really want to understand why. Take the most recent example of this. The Season 2 Wildfire minifigure has been in so many sets now to the point where she's completely diluted and people have tons of her. And what makes it worse is the fact that she started off actually accurate with shoulder armor, but nowadays she literally doesn't even come with the shoulder armor, technically also making her inaccurate. And what makes this new age of inaccurate no shoulder armor wildfires worse is the fact that they do this then in the larger sets. Again, take that Temple Bounty set, which I will say has probably the worst minifigure selection I've ever seen for so many different reasons. But that wildfire, in my opinion, is one of the biggest contenders for the worst instance of it. Tell me why, in a £180 LEGO set, we are getting technically an inaccurate version of Wildfire. You seriously couldn't include the shoulder armor in a £180 set. For reference, this version of Wildfire is in 5 sets. Like I said, the Temple Bounty, she's in the Ron 2 Dragon set, she's in the Ninja Combat Vehicle, she's in the Arc Dragon, and then she's in the Zane Battle Pack mech. I really don't get how she's gotten into so many sets across so many of the same waves. And her absolute abundance is even more confusing when you realize that her Season 1 variant, which a lot of people do prefer, was exclusive to the Heatwave set. So how is it that we've gone from her only popping up in one set to her being in near enough all of them? Because I'm only including the non-shoulder pad version of this version of Wildfire. Her shoulder padded version appears in 4 sets. She's in the Kai Climber mech, she's in the Source Dragon mech, she's in the 4+ version of the Source Dragon mech, and she's in the Temple City. So she is in near enough every set. If you've collected any Ninjago sets over the last year or so, you definitely have Wildfire. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't get how this version of her is stuck around for so long. This version of Wildfire is literally becoming the newest version of the most infamous case of a Ninjago reuse. I think you all know who I'm on about. Legacy Kai is without a doubt the biggest anomaly when it comes to Ninjago sets. Of course, Legacy went on for a fairly long time, but Legacy Kai in particular seemingly made its way into absolutely everything. This version of Kai, which is fairly good may I ask, if you want a Kai minifigure, this is the way to go. You will note that he is in near enough everything, and his base version, which doesn't include a shoulder pad because that makes the number even higher, the base version is in 13 sets. Why? He is in absolutely everything. He is in smaller sets, medium sets, bigger sets. He's in magazines. He's in everything. Why is he so common, and why do they keep releasing this version of him? I really do not know. Of course, you have to consider budget, for example, and they may have not been able to make additional prints, but the fact is that there were so many Kai-oriented sets in the waves of Legacy, and I really do question why they kept doing it. Because like I said, there was also the shoulder pad variant of this version of Kai, which exclusively only came in bigger sets, and the shoulder pad didn't rescue the value by any account. It just simply was, oh, it's a version of Kai with a shoulder pad. But this one came in 4 sets. He came in a bounty, a dragon, with a city, gardens, a £300 set, and the Sonic Raider. Why was he in so many expensive sets? Why was he in so many tiny sets? What happened? Again, this has just caused a complete meme of Ninjago Legacy Kai just being absolutely everywhere and no one can seemingly get their hands off of him. I've literally referenced this in one of my own videos because it's become so infamous within the course of Ninjago. But again, LEGO just kept chucking him into sets for no determinable reason. But this does just go to show that LEGO just has a habit of either putting minifigures in not enough sets or simply in too many sets. Of course, there is a middle ground where they may be in 2 to 3 sets of varying different sizes, but ultimately speaking, most of the minifigures have these issues. Because like I said, it's not even like those 2 are the only ones that have this problem. There are so many other ones that do. The 2 most recent examples I would probably say is Season 1 Sora and Core Wu, because they were also in so many sets, and it feels so diluted to have them now. But you may think that is where the nightmare ends. Of course, too many minifigures, not enough minifigures, and inaccurate minifigures. That is the problem with collecting Ninjago minifigures. Nope, there is a 4th. And that is the absolute hell, which is the land of exclusive Ninjago minifigures. And you may think that's a great thing. But look at this! The definitive most expensive Ninjago minifigure that has ever existed, being Lloyd DX, has the problem of being beyond expensive because it was exclusive to Target 10 years ago. Released in a 4-pack which only ran for a little bit of time, and as far as I'm aware also had a condition to actually get your hands on it. I believe it was spend a certain amount and you actually get your hands on it. So not only was it behind basically a paywall, it was also exclusive to America, and as someone who doesn't live in America, imagine the hell I went through to get my hands on one. But the thing is that it's not even like it's just a case of getting your hands on it, because there are listings of it that exist, even though they're extremely rare and they're getting rarer by the day. Honestly, if you want a Lloyd DX, you need to get him as soon as possible, because there will be a time, in my opinion, where he will be impossible to get. And that's the thing, it's not even just getting him to you. You also then have to pay the actual price. And like I said, currently speaking, he has an estimated value of £270. Do you know what you could buy for that much money? But instead, if you want to complete your DX collection, and you have to get this non-canon version of Lloyd, which costs literally more than some of the modular sets that we've gotten from Ninjago. Your option is either this one minifigure or this set on screen, and you'd have money to spare. But at least you can squint your eyes and you can say, well, it's not really a canon minifigure, so I don't actually need it. Yeah, that's fine, you can look at it that way. But then, let's take a look at the Stone Armor Ninja, which is the exact same problem, not as expensive, but very much there. If you want to get your hands on this canonical set of minifigures which everyone wanted, you have to jump through hoops. So, let's start off with at least the benefit of the doubt. Say you were Bear in 2014 and you got the Battle for Ninjago City set. So that means you got your hands on the Lloyd, you got your hands on the Zane, and you got your hands on the Nia. That for one would save you about £30 worth of having to buy those 3 minifigures, because you got them there instead of having to buy them on the aftermarket. Which, side note, if you note that in that Battle for Ninjago City set is a version of Jay, which is just his actual rebooted outfit, just with the shoulder armor of the Stone Armor Ninja. So again, inaccurate minifigures, but hey, who's me to judge? It was only like an £80 set. So you've got 3 and there is only 3 to go, so that should be relatively easy, right? Well, let's start off simple. You can get your hands on Jay for relatively decent because he came out in a book. You'd only be paying £5 give or take for the Jay, so you've got 4. So the last 2 are left to get. That'll be quite fun, right? No, because now you've got to get your hands on Cole and Kai, who both came in exclusive packs that were again in America only. Kai came out in the exact same way that Lloyd DX did in a 4-pack of minifigures, so you had to get your hands on that pack as well, so you couldn't even buy it individually. So if you're not a fan of the other 3 themes, you've got 3 minifigures that you don't even want. But let's say you didn't get the pack 10 years ago, so now you've got to go and get the Kai individually. But like I said, Jay was only £5, and the other 3 would only have cost you about 30 between them. So Kai can't be that much more expensive, right? No, £80. So you're another £80 into the collection, and you've got one of the minifigures. But the thing is that minifigure is also technically inaccurate because it doesn't have the flat silver shoulder pads. So you're gonna have to replace the shoulder pads if you want it to be accurate like I did. So there you go, you're £80 in the hole already, not including shipping. And then you just got to get your hands on the Cole as well, which is all well and good. He came out in a little pack in 2016, that shouldn't be too bad. No, it's another 50. So you spent an additional £130 on those 2 minifigures alone. This collection is now worth, what, £150? So that's all well and good, even though you're not even done there. Because you also now need to replace the legs on your Jay, your Cole, and your Kai, because even though they're fantastic leg prints and some of my favourite leg prints we've ever gotten, if you want accurate minifigures that line up with the other 3, you're gonna have to make sure you get some plain legs and just replace those expensive legs just for the sake of accuracy. And just like that, after £150, you've got your full collection of Stone Armor Ninja. It's just, why? I understand that it's a whole thing of exclusive promotional media, and obviously it's an incentive to buy these things, but at the same time, all you're doing is create an environment of these really difficult minifigures that your average fan or an average kid who's a fan of Ninjago just simply won't be able to get. And that is ultimately where I take my issue with it. What if someone just wanted the Stone Armor Ninja? What if someone who grew up watching Ninjago was finally able to get these minifigures and they just wanted to get their favourite set of armour, which was the stone variant? But instead, they have to spend £150, which in my opinion is just simply not fair. This should be more like what they've somewhat done in recent time, for example with the Samurai Lloyd. It's an exclusive version of Lloyd, a very cool version of Lloyd, but you're not really going to be missing out too much if you don't get your hands on it because it's not canon by any account. So honestly, it's a fun way to get a fun, cool minifigure. It's just you're not completely separating half of the fans who want this canon version behind this ridiculous paywall. And that is, in my opinion, why collecting Ninjago minifigures is an absolute nightmare. If you agree with me, or if you disagree with my feelings on it, please let me know, because I'll be very curious to hear. But in my opinion, Ninjago minifigures needs a big change up, because honestly, I feel like in its current state, it is actively promoting having a difficult time getting your hands on the minifigures. Let's just say I'm not looking forward to getting Spectral Zane. But that is about it for today, you guys. Thank you very much for watching. I honestly had a lot of fun making this video, even though I came across very ranty. It was a very fun topic to talk about, and I hope you got as much enjoyment out of this as I did. Also, I didn't even bring up Bricktober, that's a whole nother issue. Okay, bye!